Hello there, my name's Brandon and I make pictures out of tiny squares. And I've got a relatively small project for this video, quite literally because this is my small samurai sprite, and he's appeared in a couple videos before, and this time I'm exploring just a few different animations for him. The first one that I'm making here is a run cycle, which given how small this sprite is, it'd probably be fine to make this as a 4-frame cycle, but I'm actually going to work this one up as a 6-frame one. My thinking for this was that with 6 frames you can usually capture more of a natural cycling to it, and I thought that'd be a really nice counterpoint to the low detail of the sprite itself. One of the most efficient ways to create a 6-frame run cycle is to start by only creating the first half of it. So for these first 3 frames, I'm working up a position where the foot is pushing off the ground, and then there's one that's kind of extending or floating through that step, and finally one that's contacting the ground, where we can see that I've brought the head lower to emphasize the impact and head bobbing through the run. Now what I'm going to do is use these for the last half of the run cycle, the remaining 3 frames, but I'm going to change the appearance of the front and the rear facing limbs. So in other words, the first 3 frames and the last 3 frames of this animation will both have the same silhouette, but their internal detailing will reflect either the left or the right arm or leg. Now, because the body is facing slightly toward us, I've gone through and revised the length of the arms, shortening the length of the front arm when it's extended out front, and the back arm when it's in the back. Which is just kind of accounting for the fact that in those positions, the arm doesn't start where the silhouette of the body ends, but rather part of it overlaps with the body. So it shouldn't have been extended that far to begin with. From here, I continued making edits to the run cycle to generate one where he's holding his katana. I wanted it to be a posture where he's kind of leaning with his shoulder and holding the katana behind, which this starts out a bit funny just because the arm is still positioned as it was from the first run cycle. It actually just kind of looks like it probably could have worked out to be like a Naruto run pose, if not for the katana. But in the end, I pulled it closer, and then I added this other hand in there too also. On the contact frame, where everything drops by a pixel, I made that katana change angle here too by having it be 2 3-pixel segments rather than 3 2-pixel segments, like in the other frames. I hope I said that right. What's nice here too, though, is that this cycle used the exact same footing as the first one. And so all I had to change was the top half, and that top half only required 3 unique positions, since it looked okay to have the katana stay relatively in place rather than having it pass over the body. Okay, the next animation here is going to be for a jump. To plan this out, I've placed lines that are spaced 10 pixels apart, which is pretty much the head to toe height of the character. So my plan was to make it so that they can jump twice their height, and then a double jump would get them up that same distance again. This animation started with a crouch frame, and now I'm doing an upward launch sort of posture, which the biggest indications here were probably from rotating the feet to point down. And then I've also pushed his hair bun down, sort of like it's being forced back by that upward movement. And at this point in the time lapse, I'd actually totally forgotten that I was supposed to have him jump up to that middle line. So right now you actually see me work out the change in position for him to come back down from the jump, which is kind of the reverse set of features as going up. Like I'm making the feet more flat, moving the hands out a bit, and then I'm having that hair bun push the opposite way. To correct for this extra height, I went back in and added a couple extra frames, just copies of that launch pose while he's jumping up to the higher level. And as far as the positioning of the frames goes, I just kind of felt this one out, but the general idea is that the distance traveled from frame to frame is the largest at the beginning and the end of the jump, and then the spacing between poses gets closer together at the apex of the jump, so you feel this sort of parabolic movement, to account for like acceleration, deceleration, and all that, right? The next part of this animation is about working out the double jump. I like it when there's like kind of a different body language or a flourish to it, so I'm doing a sort of classic front flip spin as the second jump. To pull this off, I'm finding a pose where he's just sort of curled up in a relatively balanced way. And then to generate the other spin positions, I'm going to rotate this in 90-degree increments to yield a total of 4 spin frames. So it's actually the same pixel art, just perfectly rotated 90 degrees. And after coming out of that full spin, I've got him dropping down in the same pose as before, just from a greater height. As an additional bit of decoration, I've added this little bit of dust shooting out from the foot upon that second jump. I wanted it to sort of feel like when there's like a ripple of water from skipping a stone. which now that I'm saying that sounds super poetic, but yeah, that's exactly like why it's got that bit of circular pattern to it. All right, and the final animation for the day is more of a wildcard type of item. You can see here that I've got this armored appearance for the character, and my idea was that there should be some kind of quick and stylish way to transform into this version. So what I want to work out is this sort of abstract thing where he floats up and rotates around. Meanwhile, the individual pieces of armor kind of float in and attach to him. I hope that sounds clear enough to get the vision of this, but you'll see what I mean in a moment either way. But for now, I decided to start this by working out the rotation of the base sprite design. So I've got him in this T pose, and then I'm trying to achieve that 3D rotation effect by moving in each arm by 1 pixel at a time, and a similar but lesser treatment for the body. And meanwhile, I'm paying attention to what should stay in front of the body and what should hide behind it. What's limiting here is obviously just with the size of this sprite, because once you start shaving off a total of 2 pixels of width per rotation, well, you can only do that a couple of times or you won't have any sprite left over. So he kind of bottoms out around 3 pixels of width, which I sort of imagine to be the size of the torso when viewed from the side compared to it being more broad when viewed from the front. One of the things that really helped here once again was the hair design, because I could spin the bun around and you get that additional sense of depth and overlap from that too. Once I had that full rotation, I duplicated the frames to basically do the same thing again, but with the armored version. Now, this part was kind of funny because while I was doing this, I was having this sort of internal debate about whether it'd be more efficient to draw armor over the base design, which, already had those rotated frames worked out, or to start from that armor design and turn it into a rotation. In this case, I figured that the more labor-intensive thing would have been to artificially rotate from that armor design. So I went the route of just basically dressing the armor over top of the base sprite on kind of a frame-by-frame basis. In this way, I knew that the hands and the feet would always be in an equal position between each version. That maybe sounds kind of obvious now, but it's funny how you can sort of second guess that in the moment. And, by the time that I had settled that line of thought in my head, the other half of my brain had already finished making the frames anyway, so it basically all worked out in the end. So now there's 2 full spins, one in the base design and one in the armor design. And so the last step is just to figure out the in-between, like how does the armor get onto him? Well, I started this by considering how a frame just before the fully armored appearance would look. And I made all these individual pieces of armor kind of floating just beyond the sprite for a bit of clarity. I chose the position where he's facing the default orientation to make this on. That way the armor pieces would kind of reflect how they are in the final armored sprite also. From here, I worked backwards by duplicating this position and then moving the armor pieces further away from the sprite, while also shaving away a few pixels at a time to make them smaller. It'll be as if they come from far out and then close in around the character. However, to make it so that they could kind of appear out of nowhere, on the next frames, again, we're working backwards here, I started to bring them further inward again. Or closer inward again, I guess. Further inward, does that make sense? I don't know. Eventually, this got to the point where they sort of originate from behind the character. And so I think this works as kind of a rather seamless appearance of those armor pieces. Basically, they kind of shoot outward and then rebound back onto the character. All right, let's bring everything together here to finish out. Also, I realized I missed this originally, but I went back and revised the armor design to also include gloves on the hands there. I have a lot of fun with the puzzle solving aspects of small sprite work like this, so I'm definitely going to have to keep coming back to this one from time to time to make some more, maybe other armors, or I guess like some special attacks for the current one, something like that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed seeing these come together, and thank you for watching, and take care and keep it square.